TEDxScotlandville.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got finest up in here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen.
So I live in a historically black community called Scotlandville. And like most black communities, it faces fair share of disinvestment. In fact, as long as I can remember, most of it has been in some type of disarray for my lifetime. Data shows that up to 75% of the area is either classified as abandoned or adjudicated. So, got to thinking to myself, with other like-minded individuals, we know the story about how we got here, but how do we get out of it? What ways can we change our community to revitalize it into something beautiful, something that really shows the potential of the residents that live there? One word, don't be shocked. Gentrification. And I know y'all looking at me like, did he just say gentrification? Like, is this dude serious? Hear me out here, because I haven't lost my mind, at least not totally yet. When we hear gentrification, we automatically get these negative ideas in our head, terms like urban renewal, opportunity zones, reinvestment, stuff like that. But at its core, and we'll talk about it today, gentrification can be something that you can use for yourself, by yourself, with yourself. So we look at, over time, began to study blogs, articles, books, learning from governmental agencies. What are tools that other people are using to revitalize their communities that are already out there? Well, after my discovery, a few of these came up. Items like cultural districts, historic districts, TIFs, which is tax incremental financing, heritage districts, regional and local landmarks, and a plethora of other things. Every city has different terminology for a combination of all these items. But all these things do is really, in a nutshell, help you gentrify the area. Now again, when you say gentrify, typically when we think about that, we think of items or we think of images like this. We think of images with the young lady, normally white, running in the historically black neighborhood, bashfully in the air, wind blowing in her hair, and we see that coming into the hood. Let's call it what it is. You're like, nah, that's not what we want. But in truth, you use these tools to really do for yourself, by yourself, and with yourself. And in fact, if you don't use these tools correctly, it either fails and it's not black owned. So what do you mean when you say it fails and it's not black owned? Well, it fails because investors come in and use these different tools as a way to put something in your community for profit, to get the dollar from it, to really change the demographic of the community, to be honest with you. And it typically fails because the people from the outside of the community don't want to come in that community, right? And B, the people from the community just don't rock with it. They don't see it as authentic. They see exactly what's going on. And so what you have is you may have this new improved, new building, a new infrastructure within your community, and 5 years later, it's abandoned, it's gone. Why didn't it work? Because the community didn't invest in it. They didn't care. It wasn't for them. They weren't consulting or anything. The second, it's not black owned. So what does that mean? So that means you have a whole bunch of new infrastructure in your community, and it's nice and it's great, and people go to it, but the people that's from that community, that don't look like they're from that community, are not making money from that community. So it's not being circulated by that community in particular. And so what we have this effect I like to call is the Black Museum effect. Like, Byron, what's that? Well, the Black Museum is essentially when you have historic communities like Harlem, South Side Chicago, South Central LA, even here in Louisiana, a community like Treme, or even in our own city, like a South Baton Rouge, to where historically, at least along for the last 30 plus odd years, it's been a predominantly African American community, But what happens is that it no longer looks as such. It's only black in memory, in pictures on the wall. It's like a museum. So you walk the block, you go to the corner store, you go to the neighborhood parks, the people that made that community what it was, the culture, the value, the vibrancy, the history are no longer there, and instead you get implants. And so now you just become a showcase of, look how good cool this black community was, as if it's trendy, as if it's cool and trendy to look at our culture on that level. So I implore people, as we look at these tools and look at these different items, is to look back into your own community. Because where you are, as most black and brown communities, are in urbanized communities. What does that mean? Is that you're more closely in proximity to a downtown or an uptown, something like that. Because most of the people that were there before you, via, call it what it is, white flight, they left to the suburbs. Well, now in this day and age we live in, what's the few things that people want to do now? Everybody wants to ride scooters to work, ride your bike. Everybody's interested in public transportation. They want to use Uber. They want to use Lyft. They want to be able to walk from their neighborhood to the library, to the restaurant, and not have to use their car. But guess who owns the property that allows that to happen? You do. So the moment that you begin to buy the hype and not see the value of the community that you live in, you give it up. So our communities are bought out. You get offered something for your property that's 4 or 5 times money that you've never seen before. And you take it and go. This house been great-grandmas to grandmas, down to you, and now it's all, you're always fixing something up, a leaky roof here, a plumbing incident, got to put new floors, new tiles, and you bought out. And next thing you know, that house that they paid you maybe $50,000 for, you look up on Zillow, it's $350,000. Easy. Bought out. So as you see here, this is one of the community aspects that we look into. It's classic buildings that we decided that we're going to work with our local developers with these same tools that I mentioned before to reinvest back into our communities. Why? Because other people are doing it, and they're using our data to do so. So when they apply for like the cultural districts or historic districts or all these other things, you don't realize it, but they take your story, they take your background, they take the trials and tribulations that your community has gone to build up its story. They put it in a nice little manila folder or a binder, put it in a book, put it on a website. They get granted these stamps, and all of a sudden developers are now getting 15, 20, 30% off the dollar to develop in your neighborhood to put whatever they want to based off of your story in the backs of your people, and you don't even realize it. So what we did last October is that we did something that's never been done before. In North Baton Rouge, we created a cultural district here in Scotlandville, the first of its kind, and really the first ever that was led by a black organization. And it's not only that. We're still in the process of doing a historic survey in which we're taking the historical data from our community, the cultural impact, the value, all of our stories, both written and oral, piling it together, because it's never been done before, so if nobody can tell our stories, then it just washes away when the next hurricane comes in and swipes everything away. So now we have data for our communities. We have substantial infrastructure on the way. And we use that to teach our future developers, our current residents, on what to do to change their community. Because everybody wants to buy back the block, which is great, buy back the block. But newsflash, a lot of people in your community already own the block. They just don't know the tools and resources what they can use to revitalize. We don't lack in imagination, innovation, and everything. We typically lack in the resources and the tools used. So you see here this image. This is, for one of my good friends, an image of what they're going to do to the same property that you just saw earlier. That same innovation. But guess what? We're using the tools, we're using the resources, we're using all these districts, and we're coming together and creating our own plans. And it's not to diss anybody, but it's to show, you know what, no more are people going to be able to take our information, take our history, take our culture, take our dignity, and go and put a new pawn shop in there, a new cash advance, No, we're going to do our own stuff. We're going to put restaurants. We're going to put rooftop dining. We're going to places where you can go to our own 24-hour fitness areas. So when I say let's revitalize our community, let's gentrify on our own terms, in our own way, with our own people. Thank you.